Let's see if we can break this down even further as we invite into the stream Greg Valliere, AGF Investments Chief U.S. Policy Strategist, as well as Kevin Mahn. He is Hennion and Walsh CIO. Good to have both of you here. Let me start with you, Greg. The overall implications of what is still unfolding, what would you tell us?
Well, I think this president desperately wanted to avoid talking much about COVID in the month of October. And I thought that the Supreme Court pick would accomplish that for him. I think he was looking forward to getting a new justice confirmed. Now, I think between today and November 3rd, we're going to talk a lot about COVID.
And that discussion doesn't seem to be a very happy one for the market seemingly this morning. Kevin, we're seeing a decline here, although it has lessened to some degree, right, since we got underway this morning and even compared with the futures trading early in the morning. What's your read through for the markets of the significance of this?
Sure. And let me start by just wishing President Trump and the First Lady a full and speedy recovery. But this just adds another level of uncertainty going into Election Day, both with respect to the outcome of the election, how long that's going to take to determine a winner, who's going to be in control of Congress, and add all of that, Jules, to will there be another stimulus bill, the open seat of Ruth Bader Ginsburg and the timing of her replacement, and of course, the timing of a potential COVID-19 vaccine candidate. That's a lot of uncertainty, and that creates a lot of volatility in the days and perhaps months ahead.
Greg and Kevin, Dan Roberts here. Thanks for joining us. You know, there's sort of a double-edged way to approach this because the big two questions, and each of you can field this from your respective expertise areas. What does it mean for Trump's chances in the election? You would certainly think that this would hurt things, but I've seen people try to make the opposite argument and say, actually, if he emerges in 2 weeks and says, oh, look, I'm healthy, I beat it, I'm fine, maybe it helps and inspires confidence. And then for markets, you mentioned, Kevin, well, it's more uncertainty. In some ways, this isn't that unexpected. I mean, people call this the October surprise. So I guess I'd ask each of you whether you think there's any way this could be good. Maybe, Greg, you go first.
I look back upon 1981 when Ronald Reagan was shot. He handled it quite well with some humor. He came back. I think he got a wave of sympathy and goodwill from the public. This could occur also for Trump. And you have to say, he's getting the best medical care in the world. Odds would favor him beating this. And if he does beat it with some, again, good humor, it could actually, ironically, be a plus.
Yeah, and I won't touch upon necessarily the election prediction, but just in terms of the investment outlook, I do think there are a couple of thematic areas that resonate right now in the markets, regardless of who wins the election on November 3rd. As we work more remotely, as we shop more remotely, as we educate our youth more remotely, and of course, the heightened need for innovative healthcare solutions, opportunities in healthcare, e-commerce, and technology resonate beyond November 3rd and perhaps for the years to come.
Oh, can't hear you.
I'm muted. I have a bit of a cough. Hopefully it's not COVID. Trying not to interrupt people. So Greg, I am curious. When you talk about this possibly being handled with humor, couldn't the president, should he and hopefully recovers from this, and if it is a mild case, I mean, I know an 88-year-old who recovered from COVID-19. Doesn't that send a message to the country that, yes, this is horrific, we've lost a great many of our countrywomen as well, but that this is a survivable disease, especially for a man who is overweight, not necessarily in the best of health, and 74 years old?
Yeah, absolutely. He, I think, would have a little more difficulty today saying we've turned the corner than he did yesterday saying we've turned the corner. And I think he'd also have a little more difficulty today saying the economy is in fabulous shape when you look at the unemployment report, and I'd say it's okay, but it's maybe not booming right now.
Greg, this question to you. I've had a number of notes come in through my inbox today that talk about how this raises the stakes for the vice presidential debate next week. We know these VP debates normally don't have a whole lot of impact on the presidential race, but do you feel like the stakes have been raised as a result of what's played out today?
Absolutely. You know, it's entirely possible that'll be the last debate. I'm not certain we will get the next two Democratic debates. So I think there'll be a real focus. I mean, Pence has good experience. He's been a governor, he's been a House member, vice president for almost 4 years. Kamala Harris is a pretty good debater. I think that this used to be the sleeper. I think this will be highly viewed.
Kevin, I want to come back to you on a point that Greg was talking about earlier, and that's
Sure.
about when President Reagan was shot. Greg talked about the sort of public perception. I'm curious about the market perception, right? When we have had events that have maybe sidelined presidents for a while, what the history has been in terms of market reaction, or even if this is comparable to those.
It's hard to say that this is necessarily purely comparable to what happened to Ronald Reagan, but it does add a level of uncertainty. And let's hope that he does have a full recovery and is back on the campaign trail in 2 weeks. But aside from that, it's hard to make a valid argument that there's not going to be more periods of heightened volatility in the weeks ahead. There's just too many uncertainties right now. Last week, we saw the third largest outflow from U.S. equity funds ever. Futures and pricing options markets right now are pricing more volatility through December until we have an outcome from this particular election. We don't know the status of the new stimulus bill. We don't know the timing of a vaccine candidate, and we certainly don't know the timing at this point of the replacement for Ruth Bader Ginsburg. So that's a lot of potential volatility to deal with. That doesn't necessarily mean that investors should rush to the sidelines, though, Jules. As we know, there's also a risk of missing out. According to a study from JP Morgan, for the time period between 2000 and 2019, had an investor missed the best 10 days in the market over that time frame, their returns were cut in half. So I said this the last time I was on the show, tongue in cheek, but it still holds true. It's not necessarily about market timing, but it's about time in the market and diversification. That's important over the long term.
Kevin, I'm glad you brought up the 25.8 billion that flew out of equity funds
Yes.
the weekend in September 25th. We've just learned that Joe Biden has tested for the coronavirus, but is awaiting the results. So we don't have the results yet. So let me throw this last question to Greg. I apologize for a hypothetical. What happens if Biden tests positive for this?
Well, he'll have to, everyone around him will have to quarantine. Biden will have to stop his campaign. He looked a little frail in the debate, so I think people would be concerned about his health. But I do think that things will get back to normal by late October. I still think Biden is the slight favorite. And sadly, I am not convinced we'll know until well into December who actually won.
Kevin Mahn from Hennion and Walsh, the CIO, as well as Greg Valliere, the AGF Investments Chief U.S. Policy Strategist. We appreciate your both being here.
Hey investors, Zach Guzman here. Are you interested in learning more about the markets and getting the latest financial news? Well, then click right here to subscribe to our Yahoo Finance YouTube channel. Get the latest up-to-the-minute market analysis, big interviews in the world of finance, and information on how to manage your money every day wherever you are.